and I get these notifications from you. I look at my
Never come
phone,
in.
swipe away the notification, and carry on.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Cosmic Cast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Cosmic Cast, brought to you from the Earth and Solar System team at the University of Manchester. I'm John Panay-Fisher, and we've got the usual co-hosts of Elliot Carter, Ricky Bahir, Marissa Lowe, and Tom Harvey.
Hello.
And of course, a very sort of special welcome to all you watching at the start of what is now our fourth season. I can't believe that we're at season 4 already. It feels like only the other day since we started our humble podcast.
It's kind of terrifying as well, because it means that me and Tom are into the 4th year of our PhDs.
Indeed, that is quite
scary. I don't think it's okay that you just say things like that.
Sorry.
You're right.
I thought for this first episode of the season, though, I thought we'd just have a bit of a chat with just us, the hosts, see what we've been doing over the summer. So, for instance, Ricky, you've been continuing in your post in ESA as with your fellowship there. So, what have you been up to over the summer? Really, I guess have things opened up a bit more in the Netherlands at the moment?
So things have opened up more, but we are still very much limited in access to our office. So at STech, they are attempting, which is based in the Netherlands, they are attempting to get people in 2 to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
But I think for the foreseeable future, they think it's not going to be mandatory for people to work in an office. So they really want people coming at least twice a week, but they might even, it's still an option for us to remote work for indefinitely, it seems. But that hasn't really still in my post. So for listeners who don't know, I'm a research fellow, which is essentially the equivalent to a postdoc, but you have to design a proposal for what you want to do, and then they see whether they want to fund it. So I'm still carrying on with my Martian research, looking at Martian fluvial channels on Mars, so rivers that formed in the ancient past. But 20% of my time is also dedicated to working with the ExoMars rover team. So 80% research, 20% working with basically a team that I couldn't work with if I was based anywhere else. So yeah. It's really interesting.
So what are you doing with ExoMars then?
So I'm what we're called a simulation officer. So essentially, if you have a mission going to a planet, you've already designed the rover or the robot that's going to do the analyses when it gets to that planet. Even in a satellite, you'd want to do some kind of simulation ahead of time. And essentially what you do is a simulation plays out as though that rover or that satellite has got to the planet it wants to investigate. And the science team need to practice working together to analyze data that is retrieved. So as a simulation officer, I, almost like in Dungeons and Dragons, I set out a scenario for the team to play out. So I have to simulate data. I have to simulate a location. So obviously the location is based on Oxia Planum, where we actually plan to land. And we act out that scenario. So we act out a strategic shift. So the shift that the scientists will be analyzing data in, and they determine what they want to do after analyzing that data. I don't do it by myself. There is a team of 27 of us, and we work together to design the scenario.
So do you each pick a small element, and then you basically are in charge of laying that out?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So,
as in Dungeons and Dragons, then, are you chaotic evil? I would assume.
If that's a down with the kids terminology, I don't know it, but yes.
I don't really know what that means. These are just D&D terms that I've picked up as well.
Right. Okay. Yes.
It sounded like an amusing thing to say. It's a throwaway gag.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good throwaway gag, and I think it really added to the podcast.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So this year we've split the simulations into 4 types. We have the after landing, so as though the rover has just landed on Mars, and what the team would want to do immediately after that. We then have opportunistic science. So as though the team have got 2 pieces of data and they need to go, well, looking at these 2 pieces of data, which is the thing we want to do most of all, because the rover only has a limited amount of time there in its nominal mission. So they have to really decide what's going to be the best thing for the mission. And that can be difficult. And then the third one we have is a thing called the ALD mission. And the ALD is a set of instruments on board the rover, which will actually process samples that are dug from the subsurface using the drill on board the rover. So they will test out as though they're drilling into the subsurface, and then using the instruments to analyze that drilled sample. And that will be done just before Christmas.
Okay. So other than like seeing what you might be doing day to day or sol to sol, is the purpose of the simulations also to work out teething issues and troubleshoot things?
So that's not necessarily the point of these simulations. So the ROC, which is the Rover Operations Center, they will be actually doing their own simulations with the tools and the software to get those teething issues out of the way. But we're more just trying to simulate the science team working as a group together, because obviously in science we do work in collaborations with people, but we don't often work on such short timescales as such large groups. So up to like 100 people.
Yeah. So what bit specifically are you involved with then? Are you in charge of doing some of the more sedimenty type bits, or?
Well, so I'm not part of the rover team on these simulations.
In terms, okay. So in terms of simulations,
I am more of a, as we say, in that D&D Dungeons and Dragons type of scenario, I'm more of the dungeon master. I've organized the scenario, so I can't get involved.
Delegating.
Yeah, exactly. I can't get involved in the actual simulation because I already know the data, so I already know what it's supposed to show. But in the actual rover mission, I'll be part of the rover science operations working group. So the overarching team and the macro groups, the people looking at large scale features on the surface.
It's really cool though. So how long have you been doing this? Was this something you'd been doing since you started in February, or was this quite a recent thing you picked up?
So my starting involvement in the mission was just before February. So I was a part of the team who are mapped out the geological units of Oxyoplanum. So where the rover is going to land in Oxyoplanum, we had to map out the geological units to see what might be interesting for the rover to actually traverse and try and get samples from. So I was part of that team, and that only started maybe in January. And then I was thrown into the deep end in February and had to learn all about the rover landing site and everything before we started doing these simulations. So I only really started in February.
Yeah. I guess in that respect, that kind of work, because you're working with international colleagues and big groups of people, I guess really the fact that you've been at home probably hasn't really affected that too much in the grand scale of things.
No, because we do all our meetings online anyway. We've got colleagues in America and in other parts of Europe, So yeah, it's very much international anyway. Yeah. I tell you what, it's one of the best way to meet everyone in your field, because you're suddenly on this telecom where everyone, especially as a simulation officer, you'll often have the floor, and you might not be saying anything of worth, obviously it's coming to me, but everyone knows you immediately, which is great. I mean, for better or for worse, everyone knows you immediately.
It's all about that brand recognition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I guess you've been doing, I don't know if this is a tangent we want to keep in the podcast or not, but you've been doing a lot of Twitch streaming as well.
I have been doing that. A way to blow some steam after work and just relax a little bit. Yeah.
Well, we can put a link to that in the description maybe if you want to check out your channel. Why not?
Yep.
That's a no.
I've never heard a yes sound so little like a yes.
Yeah.
Were you compromised in the Twitch earnings leak recently? Are you earning the big millions?
Thankfully, I wasn't. Don't worry. I asked my my guy. I've got a guy who deals with all my money.
Yeah.
And he said no, it was okay.
That's fine. That's good.
Don't know how we naturally segue from that to.
Just just thinking about what you've been up to over the summer, and I get these notifications from you every period. Because I've Twitch enabled notifications on my phone for some reason. It pops up every time you're live. I look at my phone, swipe away the notification, and carry on.
And ignore it. Yeah.
But no, Ricky, that sounds really cool. And whenever you've been putting in our WhatsApp chat, oh no, I'm busy doing simulations, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Well, now you know.
It sounds cool. And
it's
it's pretty
so much work though, dude. It's only supposed to be 20% of my time, but it takes way more than that.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
It's like a very cool experience.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess here in Manchester, like I got to see John and Tom in 3D the other day. Like our department's opened up quite a bit. People are in the lab a lot. People are going back to office working. So yeah, I've been going in a couple of days a week, which has been really nice. Actually,
I'd say it's been transformative. Just in terms of my own happiness, that's the happiest I felt all year, probably. Just in terms of getting to go in and interact with people in 3 dimensions.
yeah.
I'm really starting to get sick of Zoom meetings.
Did you guys find it difficult the first time, like leaving the house? Like as I've started to go in more, I found myself absolutely hopeless at leaving the house. Like it takes me around 40 minutes to collect all my things in one place. I go up and down the stairs.
More about
like,
you
I get
than
a good
anything else.
5,000 steps before I leave the house, just up and down the stairs to get like another shoe. Or
I know. Do you know? I slipped into going back into the routine of going in every day as if nothing had changed. It really did feel like on the first few days that no time at all had passed, and we'd be going in regularly the whole time.
But yeah, you've been back in the lab then, haven't you, John?
That's true, actually. I suppose I have been going in the lab more regularly all year, really. But the big difference, I guess, being in the lab is that you're there by yourself. No one else has really been around. So it's scoff lunch, because I didn't really have much time for lunch anyway, because you want to get as much done in the day as possible. But I guess this has been different because there've been like maybe 3 or 4 other people in the office. There's plenty of people about for lunch, and it just, it's all those like little off the cuff conversations, and it's just been that you have that have just make the difference, don't they? In terms of, I don't know, I feel a lot more enthused and a lot more energetic to do work rather than just being stuck at home. I don't know. I don't know if that's the sort of experience that you've all had going in a little bit more recently.
No, I've realised
definitely.
I enjoy the social side of just seeing people at work. Yeah,
and we've even done Friday drinks quite regularly now too, which has been quite nice.
Yeah,
I think it's been quite healthy for me to talk to someone other than my boyfriend who I live with. I'm really sorry, Tom, that I called you Sam the first day back in the office.
It's okay.
I was like,
it's okay.
wow, I really need to talk to more people other than my boyfriend. So it's been really good.
Yeah, it's been excellent. And of course, the big news is that both Marissa and I have had papers accepted over the past few weeks, which is really excellent news. So yours, Marissa, is in the Journal of Geophysical Research.
Yes, planets.
In fact, that was literally just last week that you had that notification, or Monday even that you had that.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. So it's my first paper I've had accepted, which is really nice. I think I've been doing the work for most of my PhD, but I started properly writing the paper at the start of lockdown.
Yeah.
Probably went through about 8 different versions after like my supervisors tore it to pieces and then put it back together again. Submitted the first version the end of April to JGR Planets, and yeah, it was a pretty good turnaround. I got the reviews back after a month.
Yeah, I mean that's really good. Like that's not normal at all, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, and I obviously had no idea if these reviews were good or not, but my supervisors were like, no, these are actually really fair and constructive. One of the reviewers suggested major revisions, so it was quite a big change to my methods that they suggested, and then the other one said minor, which was quite nice. But yeah, the problem was with they suggested I change quite a big bit of the method at the very start, which meant that I had to redo all of my model simulations over the course of about 2 or 3 months. But I got it back in, I think it was the end of August, and then yeah, I heard back last week that it had been accepted. So it's been pretty smooth sailing compared to, other timescales I've heard other people for submitting to a journal.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, I guess you've not got a link for that yet, I suppose. We can't put a link in the description just yet.
Yeah, not yet. So I think the next step will be the joys of reading through a proof version, where I will, read it over and over again and probably not notice any mistakes because I've looked at it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But it'll be exciting to see it as like in journal format. Like,
indeed, it is always the highlight. And so this is the stage where I'm at with my paper. I was literally proofreading all the typeset proofs just this morning. I think I got mine accepted quite recently as well. It's nothing as exciting as Marissa's, which is original research. It's just a review paper. in the Journal of the Geological Society of London. The Geological Society are doing they're calling it the year of space at during 2021. And as part of that, they've had some cool like lectures and things like that. So we can put a link in the description to what that year of space is about if people want to read more. But anyway, as part of that, I had an email from the editor asking if I wanted to contribute a review about something to do with the moon. And I said, yeah, that'd be cool. I'm happy to do that. And I thought I'd write a bit about lunar granulites, which is a suite of rocks that I've been working on this year anyway in general. So I thought it'd be quite nice, just a little quick review to write as it's all sort of at the top of my head. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So we can put a link to that in the episode description. And I guess thinking about it, we can put, if you're watching this, you, the audience, in like 3 or 4 months' time, we can retrospectively add a link to Marissa's paper once that's out. So future audience, a link should be down there.
Yeah, what is it like writing a review paper then, John? Because like I feel most PhD students would have written like a literature review for a report. How does it work turning that into a paper?
Yeah, I guess it's just very similar, really. I mean, I guess I can't remember because it's years since I obviously wrote my literature review. I don't remember much about it, but I mean, basically, it's effectively just much the same thing, really, where you just write a bit of an introduction, sort of explaining why a particular topic of interest is important. So, in the case for lunar granulites, so I guess for a bit of context, then for the audience who may be interested in lunar granulites, right? So, lunar granulites. They're an unusual suite of lunar rocks. They haven't been studied particularly very much over the past few decades. There's not many of them about, but they're the result of specifically high temperature metamorphism. And so the general idea is that you have something like a hot body, like a really thick impact melt sheet, and that will thermally metamorphose rocks that are sort of near it. So it's like, think regional contact metamorphism on Earth, for instance. And there's some sort of debate within the literature in terms of the precise mechanism on what the heat source is in terms of how thick an impact melt sheet needs to be. Does it need to be an impact melt sheet? Maybe it's like some sort of plutonic intrusion within the crust. That could also be like a hot source to produce regional metamorphism. And a lot of these samples, they're quite small. They're within like breccias, and then you present this clasts in soils and breccias and things like that. And so really the review is just sort of reviewing the different types of textures that we see and just sort of reviewing the kind of sort of formational mechanisms that people suggest in the literature. And the reason why they're interesting is because some of the protoliths that people have proposed that the granulites come from potentially represent lithologies that haven't been sampled within the Apollo collections and are very, very rarely sampled within the meteorite collections. So if you can understand something a bit about thermal metamorphism and specifically what the protoliths are, that gives you some more understanding in terms of the crustal diversity in the lunar crust, and that plays into constructing models of how we think the lunar crust formed and stuff like that. So going back then to how you put that into some sort of review, I guess, you just want to write some sort of introduction to sort of say, well, these are why these rocks are important. This is why it's worth reviewing right now. And then the rest of it is basically just pretty standard literature review type stuff. I guess it takes a while. The advantage of the lunar granulites, because it hasn't been very well studied, there isn't actually a huge amount of literature on them. So it was quite straightforward, really. There was maybe only, I mean, there was obviously quite a lot of references in there, but in terms of like the key core papers, there's mainly only really a handful, maybe. So it was fun. It was fun to put together, and it was nice to, it just really helped focus my mind as these are sort of questions I'm thinking about in general for my own research at the moment. But yeah, it was all right.
One thing I'm always curious about with reviews is like, do you have to be invited to do one, or can you just sort of decide on your own bat? Like,
I don't know. So I guess in this case, Joel Sock reached out to Katie and I to do this review. But I think, if you've got a good idea for a review, I don't see why you couldn't email an editor and say, I'd like to submit this. Would your journal be interested in publishing something like this?
You have to demonstrate that it's useful to have that information summarized. Like, I guess if you were going to, follow questions, I mean, for you in particular, I suppose, kind of what questions are, what knowledge gaps there are to set that up with reviewed literature. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always nice, I think, to include a section sort of then detailing, what the future holds and what the key questions yet to be addressed are. And that's a good way of being quite citable, I guess. But yeah.
I'd cite you if I was ever gonna, if I ever see a granulite, I'll let it know that you said hi.
Yeah, it's good. But they're cool rocks. Maybe we could put some pictures up, but they got very unique textures.
Is that the title of the review?
That is great.
Yeah, I'll put a picture up on the screen when I do the edit. Just make life really complicated for myself.
Is that the title of the review, John? Granulites, they're cool rocks.
It should be, really. That should be the subtitle, if anything.
But actually, they were very hot, isn't
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that is the thing. Actually, they were quite hot rocks. Yeah, indeed.
Cool hot rocks.
Hotrocks.com. Yeah.
Net.biz.
Good.
Anyway, but it's nice though, because that's just like Marissa. This is the sum product of my lockdown. Basically, is writing and getting them published. So at least I've got something to show for myself.
So as we were saying with Marissa, your turnaround was anomalously quick with the reviewer comments. So I sent off a paper almost at the beginning of this whole pandemic, and it took them 6 months to get back to me.
Yeah, well, as I understand, editors have been really struggling to find reviewers because I guess as everyone's been quite stressed and being at home, just people aren't really willing to. And I've definitely said no to quite a lot of reviews this year just because I'm not sure I could guarantee I could turn them around in a reasonable amount of time. So
yeah, I had a paper I submitted that was 2 months before it even went out to review, or like before anyone accepted it to review. Yeah, there's definitely a shortage out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think I got lucky then. I think I must have sent it in at a good time, caught people on a good day. But I am very glad because I do only have about 8 months left of my PhD. So I didn't really want to have that dragging out for too long.
Yeah.
Because
I
need to do those other chapters of that thesis thing. So.
You're in a great position though, having a paper, first author paper before the end of your PhD. It's great.
It's a big relief.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't get my first one out for a full year after I finished.
Did you submit by journal format?
Yes. Like I had 2 papers that I submitted sort of a month before I handed in, but they both got like rejected. And so yeah, I had to like rewrite them both. So it took quite a long time.
I'd say rejections are probably more common than things being accepted, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people sweep them under the carpet when they get rejected, but it does happen so often. So like my paper got rejected the first time. I think it happens quite often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's just looking sad.
And on that note,
goodbye everyone.
enjoy the rest of the season.
Yeah. But no, I guess on a more positive note though, I think it's been nice to go in a bit more often, and it sounds like we've all had some interesting things happen over the summer, really. So Tom, I guess you've had some meteorites classified over the summer.
Yeah, no, it's been pretty exciting. I think the labs opening up have facilitated lots of work for everybody in the group, but that's meant that people like Jane, who's been doing loads of work for the Antarctic meteorites collection, has been able to make a fair bit more progress, and that's meant that we've got some of the first samples from the first field season formally classified.
That's basic.
And you can go and look at the information about those samples on the UK Antarctic meteorites blog, which is pretty neat.
Link in the description.
And my involvement with that has kind of been through my kind of making the 3D models of the samples. So for some of those meteorites, there are fun fly around videos where you can go and spin around your favorite meteorite or something.
Yeah, they're cool models. They look awesome.
Yeah, it's been a real learning curve, that, because it was sort of a project that that has developed a lot over the lockdown period, and I'm kind of writing up the results of that at the moment, and it's it's going. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
So yeah, definitely all you in the audience, check those out. They really are really cool models if you want to check out some nice flybys of meteorites.
So Elliot, while most of us were attempting to get back into the labs, you were actually out in the field.
Yeah, I went on a little field trip a couple of weeks ago, which is it was really nice. Yeah. So
Where did you
nice
go?
I went to Northern Ireland, so Antrim.
Cool. Oh, because I guess you were sampling Columba basalts, were you?
This time columnar rhyolite. So there's
Columba rhyolites. Good God.
What is a rhyolite, sorry?
Sorry, what's that?
What is a rhyolite?
So rhyolite's a very evolved igneous rock. So if you have something like a basalt, you let it sit there in the crust for a while, fractionating and evolving. Eventually you get something that's much more silica rich, and those typically are either very explosive or they form big domes. And in this case, it seems to have formed a big dome, and you've got these really big columnar rhyolites.
I didn't know you could get columnar rhyolites. That's pretty cool. Is that common?
Yeah. I think if you were able, to sort of crack open one of those domes that you might get on sort of certain volcanoes, like can't think of a single one, maybe Unzen or some of these places that are potentially explosive, but when they're effusive, they just make a sort of big blob of lava.
Yeah.
I think if you were to go inside that dome, you would find columns, or at least in some cases. I'm not 100% sure.
What's the scale of the jointing like? Is it like similar to columnar basalts in its kind of scale, or?
Yeah, fairly. Like in one of the quarries, they're sort of nearly half a meter across, maybe a bit less.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty big. And then we went to the really cool site we went to was it's basically the site of an explosive vent. So you've just got this complete mess of like obsidian, which is like a sort of black glassy rock, just jumbled up in ash and all sorts. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's
awesome. And it was quite satisfying to get out there because it took quite a lot of detective work to actually get permission to go to the site. So it's like a designated area of special scientific interest.
Right.
You need permission, but to get the permission, you needed to know the landowner, and it's like this circular process. So I ended up like phoning up random local businesses, like, "Do you know who owns this quarry?" And eventually tracked down this man who owned the quarry. I managed to talk to him, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, come on." Yeah, so it's quite a satisfying end to a lot of detective work.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of rock now to crush and powder.
That's cool. And these are all rocks that you're going to analyze for various isotopes and chemistries and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, they're quite. So I mean, what you've got broadly in Northern Ireland is you've got a large igneous province. So you've got basalt pouring out, and then for maybe a couple of million years, it just seems to switch off, and you have these rhyolites. And one of the questions is, why has that happened, and where have the rhyolites come from? Are they just what's the remainder of the basalt sitting there in the crust, getting more and more evolved, or do they come from somewhere else? Are they related to the? Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you been to Northern Ireland before?
I went a year ago, right at the start of my postdoc, to sample loads of basalt. So I came back with like an entire car full of basalt. It looked insane. There was basalt tucked under the seat and the boot in the driver's. But the whole thing was practically touching the floor. This was a bit more controlled. Just 10 samples this time, not 200.
Well, still must be nice to get out though, anyway. Yeah,
really good.
Sorry, I wasn't sure how much to sample, so I just collected the whole edifice. Hope that's okay.
Well, better safe than sorry, isn't it?
Yeah. Guess the advantage of geology on Earth rather than in space. You can just take a sledgehammer to it and take as much as you want.
Yeah, quite. Indeed.
Especially when you're in an active quarry. No one's worrying about destroying.
Well, it's nice to be back together, everybody.
It is.
With your smiling faces.
It is.
And
indeed.
There's even the chance that at some point in the future we might be able to do an actual, genuine in-person.
Indeed. In fact, one of the future episodes we've got planned may indeed be an in-person episode. So do stay tuned for that. It'll be very exciting.
Gosh.
But yeah, no, we got some cool episodes lined up for the rest of the season. Just looking through the schedule here on the second monitor, we've got, well, we're going to be talking to Natalie Starkey in a few weeks' time about her new book, Ice and Fire, I think it's called. And then we've got episodes from Catherine Harrison, Alice Turner. We've even got an episode from Simon Matthews at the University of Iceland that we recorded at the start of the summer. We couldn't quite get out in time, talking about some of the recent Icelandic eruptions. So yeah, it should be quite an action-packed season with any luck. All on the Cosmic Cast. But anyway, yeah, we hope that you stick around and enjoy the rest of the season. I guess we've taken up a lot of your time, so we'll wrap up there. Don't forget, of course, we're on all the social medias, all over the place. You know, you got the Twitters, the Facebooks, we've got that blog that we update fairly regularly. All the links will be on the episode description and on the screen just below right now. So make sure you do give us a thumbs up and a like and all that kind of stuff. Oh, we've got Instagram too, don't forget that. Give us the likes, give us the thumbs up all over the place on the social medias. We'll be back every Wednesday for this 4th season of the Cosmic Cast. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.